Hey everybody, it's my 125 gallon native tank. Just turned the lights on this morning, and I always like to do an update on this tank if there's anything interesting or worth looking at. And there's not a lot going on in there today that's worth mentioning. I did want to get a little bit of video of that crayfish crawling along the woodwork there in the back. That's always just interesting to look at, or at least I find it interesting. I don't know why, I just like watching those crayfish crawl around on top of stuff. It's kind of cool looking to me. But speaking of which, there's one plummeting to the bottom. He fell off the spray bar up there at the top. So we've got one dead crayfish in the back. That's not terribly unusual for this tank. What I wanted to point out was, you can kind of see it in the back there, we've got an empty black mystery snail shell. So we all knew it was only a matter of time before the crayfish or somebody got a hold of those black mystery snails and went ahead and got the meat out of the shell. So one of them is most definitely gone, and I haven't actually seen the other one. I just turned the light on, so I haven't really had time to look around yet. This crayfish here also is probably on its way out. I've seen its legs move a little here and there over the last couple of minutes, but it's literally just sort of a twitching leg here and there. And in my experience, whenever I've seen the crayfish doing that, I don't know what's going on with them. It's almost like their batteries are wearing out and they just sort of run down until they eventually stop. It seems like I should put a key in their back and wind them back up or something, and then they'd start moving around again. So I don't know what causes that. I don't know why they're dying like that. I can't imagine it's anything to do with my water. Crayfish are tough as nails. They can live in stagnant water. They can live in mud puddles, any kind of hardness. They can live in brackish water. There's no, it's not like I can say, oh, well, they're in the wrong kind of water in my tank or something like that. I really don't have any idea why they wouldn't do well or survive. Some of them you can see when they die because of, they've been torn apart, they've been attacked by a larger fish, or they've been fighting with a larger crayfish. When they're soft shell, it's easy to see that they've been, chomped up and chewed on when they were a soft shell. When they just sort of slow down and wind down like this, I really don't know what's going on with that or why they don't really do well in this tank. But the numbers of fish and everything are dwindling again, and I'm just sort of noticing now we're getting back to that sort of empty tank feel. When I had a large number of shiners in there, maybe the school was large enough that they felt confident enough to swim around more. I don't know, but we seem to have gone back to this kind of laying low, hiding down in the wood, and, unless you really pay attention, it looks like I've got a great big empty tank here in the basement. So maybe we'll get back down to the bait and tackle shop. This time of year I don't have a lot of choices about what kind of fish I can put in here. I'm having issues with that tilapia getting aggressive with some of the fish that is in my 125. We can have a look at that real quick here. My snakeskin gourami is still doing really poorly. I'm on the verge of doing something about that. I really am either going to have to get in there and euthanize that, or maybe get a needle and try to puncture the air sacs and let the air out, because you can see it's already starting to balloon up now. It's definitely not going to get better on its own. It's getting worse. But this tilapia here, I believe, is the reason. I've been told that more often than not it is trauma that causes that sort of injury to a fish, for their bladder to swell up like that. And I have noticed in the recent weeks that this tilapia has been getting aggressive with the snakeskin gourami, and it's now getting so bad that it's starting to get aggressive with my tenopoma here. And as far as I'm concerned, as I've said before, this tank belongs to this tenopoma more than any other fish. This is one of my favorite fish. I absolutely adore this fish. And there's no way I'm going to sit back and let it get bullied and have to spend the rest of its life hiding in a corner because of this tilapia. So it's possible, I suppose, we could move this tilapia back into the native tank. That's where it started in an odd sort of way, if you're not familiar with the story. A couple years ago, one of my viewers down in Florida sent me some fish that were, quote, native fish that he caught in the canal behind his house. And if you're at all familiar with Florida, you will know that Florida is absolutely infested with invasive species because it has such warm tropical temperature waters down there. And two of the fish that I brought back, or two of the fish that he sent me rather, turned out to be non-native invasives. One was a Mayan cichlid that, as far as I know, is still doing well. I sent it to a friend of mine and he still has it. And the other one was this tilapia. So both of them started their life here at my house in this tank. And neither of them were native. So as they got bigger, the Mayan got aggressive. I sent that to a friend of mine that actually likes large aggressive fish. And then I put the tilapia that I did not think was aggressive in that tank because I really like that tilapia and I wanted to keep it. And now as it's getting bigger and starting to come into its own, it's becoming aggressive again. So it's got to go. I might put it in this tank. I don't know. You know, I've said all along that this tank is not really, a biotope perfect native tank. So, if I got a fish in here that's not truly a native fish, I don't really care all that much. I mean, technically, these crayfish in here are invasive species to the state of Maryland. So despite the fact that I've seen them my whole life, and these are what I think of as crayfish, when I think of crayfish, that's what I think of. They're not even native to Maryland. I've never in my life, to my knowledge, ever even seen any of the crayfish that are supposed to be native to Maryland. I believe these have actually outcompeted them, and the native crayfish in Maryland are actually probably pretty hard to find now. So, just by nature of having those in here, this tank is already very much not a native tank. I've also got that Chinese algae eater in here. So someone was just saying the other day that this tank really needs at least one good-sized fish in here. So maybe that'll happen. Maybe I'll put that tilapia back in here. If nothing else, I can keep it in here as a holding tank, just to get it away from the fish that it's bullying now. I'm not worried about it chasing some minnows around. I'm not worried about it attacking some crayfish or something like that. So maybe this can just sort of morph into my tilapia tank, and it can kind of be a blend of the tilapia tank with native minnows and stuff swimming around in it, and it can kind of be a hybrid tank. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. I don't know. Well, stay tuned and you'll find out, because I think that idea is really gaining traction rapidly in my brain. So I think maybe by this afternoon we might have that tilapia back in this tank. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything. And if you enjoy this kind of video, you might want to check out my Patreon page. I do videos like this where I just sort of pick up the camera and chat about whatever's on my mind. This was supposed to be a video about my dead snail, but, it's not unusual for my videos to sort of morph into something else altogether. So there you go. Check out my Patreon page if you're interested in that. And, of course, I will say once again, make sure you're subscribed here. We already looked at my 125, and then don't forget this one is my native tank. So thanks again for watching. Look forward to some updates, and I'll see you real soon on the next one.